Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, and the somewhat ruffled Evan Ginsberg, shall we say, this week. And I think you have something to talk about, so it's just the two of us for this show. It's the way this show started, just our own little private sounding board for whatever's on our mind, wrestling related and otherwise. So, Evan, you have something to talk about? Go ahead and shoot.
I have plenty to talk about. Over the past few days, I experienced everything wrestling related, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the tragic. And I'll start with this past Friday. Who turns up in my apartment? Wildfire Tommy Rich, the former NWA champion, and we did a 2-hour, or to be more accurate, 1 hour and 53-minute interview and virtual signing. And just a lovely, lovely guy, warm, friendly, down to earth. And in the course of the week before I did the interview, I really studied up on his career because I knew it was going to be a long interview in the slot that we had scheduled, and I wanted to be prepared. And let me tell you about Tommy's championship week. This is an amazing story. He gets in the ring with Harley Race, and Tommy was a kid. He was like 21 years old at the time, and he was over like crazy in Georgia Championship Wrestling. He's in the ring with Harley Race, champion of the world, a title match. Towards the end of the match, Race is calling the match, the veteran, and he goes, Thez Press, Lou Thez Press.
I remember how he won the match.
Yeah, so Tommy, is following the champ's lead and does exactly that, and he's absolutely shocked that Race doesn't kick out. He wasn't told that he was going to win the title that night. So here he is. He's 21 years old. And he just beat somebody he considered the greatest of all time. And Andre the Giant comes into the ring, lifts Tommy on his shoulders.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Tommy is the champion of the world back when that belt meant everything. The NWA belt was bigger than the WWF.
Yeah, it was.
Even in the Madison Square Garden program, the NWA belt was looked at as the world belt, and the WWF belt lesser. So Tommy's the champion of the world, and he's a kid, and he really doesn't even know the politics of it or what's going on. So the next day, Tommy beats Race again. The next day, Tommy beats Race on another house show. The next day, Tommy beats Race on another house show. And then Race takes the belt back within a week. So within a week, he went from top challenger to world champion to ex-champion. This is a lot for a kid to wrap his head around. And basically what had happened was this made every subsequent rematch a big money, event because he had pinned the champ, and the fans always looked at it like on any given night, Tommy Rich could beat the champ. It was the same with Ivan Koloff. Koloff's looked at as an interim champ, but when he came back to WWF in 1975, it was a big deal because he was coming back to face Bruno, and he had beaten Bruno at the Garden.
That was the thing, is that Ivan Koloff could forever say he was the man that beat Bruno Sammartino,
So for the allegedly smart fans who dismiss guys like Tommy Rich and Ivan Koloff and Stan Stasiak, you don't understand the Iron Sheik even. You don't understand the mentality. It was a different era where the belt meant everything, and a former champion had forever the prestige of having done that. And Stan Stasiak came back, and Stasiak beat Pedro Morales. Bruno came back and beat Stasiak, but even a couple of years later, when Stasiak came back to face Bruno, it was a big deal because he had beaten Pedro and he was the world champion. So he had the credibility to main event again. So without getting too long-winded with this, I had the former champion.
We've got an hour, so be as long-winded as you want.
Okay. I had the former world champion sitting on my couch, and we had a really lovely, interview and signing. And I'm sitting on my couch, and since Friday, 2 days later, 8,000 or so people have watched it, and it's nice. It's really nice, and
to let the fans know how they can watch that interview.
It's on Evan Ginsberg's Old School Wrestling page. It's on my Evan Ginsberg homepage. I posted it in a zillion places, but that's the easiest to find it. And I really, it was nice. I felt like I had made a friend by the end of the 2 hours. And since this is an interview show, our show, Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, I actually said to Tommy, I said, what do you think of the genre, the art of shoot interviews? I said, you may have noticed in the course of the 2 hours, I didn't ask you questions like who was the nastiest ring rat and things like that, because I think as two older, mature adults, you don't have to shoot low.
You never asked those. We never asked those questions.
Yeah. So I said to him, I think it's more important to honor guys like Brad Armstrong and some of the people we talked about during the 2 hours, because they don't get the honor and respect they often deserve, and they were underrated. And so I was telling the story in that interview. I could say it again here. I go to see Flair and Brad Armstrong in Philly, and Brad Armstrong was not a star on the level of a Dusty or Magnum or, Barry Windham or the guys that Flair was regularly facing at the time. But he was so great in the course of that match. You were convinced that at any given moment, Brad Armstrong could pin that guy because he was so great and so convincing. And it's interesting. Flair has the fanboy stigma. He wrestled the same match every night, which absolutely is not true. Because I saw Flair against, Barry Windham and Ricky Steamboat having, technical classics. And then I saw him with big muscle guys like Road Warrior.
Well, all wrestlers have their move routines,
Oh,
like
yeah.
Even like the great ones like Bret Hart or Bob Backlund.
Sure.
Bruno. They would set guys up in a specific way, and they had their finisher and stuff like that. The problem is nowadays most kids these days are watching wrestlers that throw every move in the book in one match, and they do it all in 3.5 minutes. And so wrestlers don't have a move routine like they used to do in the old days. I mean, let's put, for example, a guy like Chief Jay Strongbow. Of course, he would start doing his tomahawk chops, and as unpolitically correct as they were, but you knew he was setting guys up for, the Indian deathlock that he would put on people. There would be a story that was at least told to get to that level. And nowadays, it isn't. All you're setting it up for is likely a 2.5 count, so that at some point in time, somebody can run in and ruin the match at the very end. Right, but anyway, continue on with what your point was.
So, as a huge Flair fan back in the day who would see him every month in Philly and other arenas, I saw Flair wrestle every possible style, including bloodbath brawls and, war games matches and such. And I didn't see it as he wrestled the same match every night. So I was asking Tommy about working with Flair. And it was interesting because he was somewhere in the middle. He said, I enjoyed Harley more. Harley could work any style. Harley could work to his opponent's style. He said, whereas when you were in the ring with Flair, you were working Flair's style. But he threw in the word, but Flair was great. Flair was great. That's from somebody in the ring with Flair. He used the word great. And the fans that dismiss Prime Flair, yeah, Flair stayed around too long, like many wrestlers, but Prime Flair, NWA champ Flair, 70s and 80s, that guy was tremendous. Believe me, I saw him dozens and dozens of times live. So, we had Tommy booked for 4 appearances, and this morning, I did not go with Tommy to his appearance because I wanted to see my dear friend Jimmy Valiant. Jimmy Valiant was in town at a different appearance. There was a big convention yesterday, the big event, so the wrestlers were like everywhere and anywhere all weekend, and I hadn't seen Jimmy in a few years, and he's 82 going on 83, and knowing, wrestling isn't always for longevity. With somebody 82, you don't say, "Oh, I'll go see him next time."
No, you're basically like at age 200. If you're a wrestler and you're aged 82,
it's kind of like dog years. But he looked great, and so Jimmy's wearing this wild jacket, with the ponytail down his back and the tattoos on his face. He's like an old hippie. I love this man with all my heart, and Jimmy had put me in his Hall of Fame at his wrestling school for service to the wrestling community, which meant a lot to me.
Congratulations, that's great.
I mean, this was years ago, and I went up there for the ceremony, and I tell my friends, I've also been a teacher for decades. That meant more to me, Jimmy putting me in his wrestling camp, than if I got an honorary degree from some higher institution of education or whatnot. So anyway, I see Jimmy, and the guy is literally hugging me, going, "I love you, brother. I love you, brother. It's so good to see." And it's sincere. It's from the heart. And this is the best thing about pro wrestling: the friends you make, and going down roads together with these guys, and getting to know them, and being in each other's homes. I was in Jimmy's home in Shawsville, Virginia, and in my book, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, I do a piece on Jimmy, and he has a wrestling school on a mountain. It's like Shangri-La. You look from the top of the mountain, and for miles you see nothing but mountains. And he's like the Dalai Lama at the top of the mountain. Some of you fans are too young to remember Lost Horizon, but the Dalai Lama is at the top of the mountain, and you would go visit the guru, and that's Jimmy Valiant. And he, like I said, he's like an old hippie, just like a spiritual, like lovely person. And
where's the school at?
Shawsville, Virginia. Boogie's Wrestling Camp.
Virginia. Wow, that's really something. I would say, one of these days I'd love to convince him to do our show. I'm
sure he would. I mean,
love to have him on as a guest.
He's friends with me and Mike Lano.
Put the word out there. He's welcome to promote his school, obviously.
So this is the lovely side of pro wrestling, sitting with legends and friends who are legends, and just the friends you make in this business.
Well, I was gonna say, how many wrestlers and so forth have been to your house? You've had a lot of
Lanny Poffo, Johnny Valiant, and Greg Valentine have slept on my couch.
Tiger Khan.
I mean, I've had tons
Nikolai
of
Volkov.
I've had tons of wrestlers to the house, but Lanny, Johnny, and Johnny and Greg have actually slept there. And I tell the funny story. I'm in a 6-story apartment building, And Greg was sleeping here one night, and we leave the apartment. We walk out the front door. It's a busy New York street. All of a sudden, a car screeches, halts on a dime, and guy leaps out of the car in traffic, points at Greg and goes, "You're Greg Valentine." And Valentine goes, dead face, poker face. He goes, "Yes, I am." So meanwhile, the traffic is like backed up for 3 blocks because the guy stopped the car in the middle of the street. And so, yeah, even yesterday.
Your dad said that only Muhammad Ali could stop traffic in New York, but I guess he was wrong. Greg Valentine can too.
Well, this is Queens, so Manhattan's more jaded. Manhattan's more star-studded. But my father actually said that Muhammad Ali, superstar Billy Graham, and Julie Newmar, Catwoman, who had like the most incredible body back then, and he drove in the 60s and 70s. He said these guys would stop traffic. Ali was the most famous person in the entire world. And superstar Billy Graham, nobody looked like him back then. I mean, this was before there was a gym on every corner. And, you know, Billy Graham walked down the street and you noticed, boy, particularly with the bleached blonde hair. The guy was gigantic. And Julie Newmar was stunning. And she's 90. She still looks stunning. But so I was just accentuating the positive. Let me tell you the other side of pro wrestling.
Oh boy,
what happened?
Another 45 minutes now.
Oh my God, what happened? So, as an agent, I have various contacts. I get Tommy Rich booked on an indie show in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey today. All he had to do was do a little promo and work the gimmick table. So it's win-win for everybody. Except one of the wrestlers died in the ring.
Oh.
Died in ring. And I knew him. Vince Steele. The Jurassic Juggernaut, they used to call him. The guy was a huge guy, pushing 400 pounds. Had a massive heart attack during the match. And, I wasn't there because I went to visit Jimmy Valiant.
Thank God.
I'm glad I wasn't there because I would have been traumatized. I'm not going to exaggerate and say we were close friends or anything. We were Facebook friends, and
it's terrible.
The times I heel managed, I shared dressing rooms with him, and just a pleasant guy. 40 years old, 3 children. You're a dad, Russell, you know. So just an utter tragedy. And Tommy Rich went down with 2 other agent friends to the card, and they told me he was, practically in tears. It was a devastating thing to witness. And that's the other side of pro wrestling. And, you're an indie wrestler. You didn't make real money at it. And now you have 3 kids without a dad. And it's that's the other side of pro wrestling.
Was it because of a move that he took that he had a heart attack, or?
No, it wasn't a particular move. The guy was pushing 400 pounds. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not inside. But the guy had a massive heart attack, died in ring.
It's just tragic.
Yeah. So it's like in the course of 48 hours, the joy and pain that somebody experiences in this business, the extremes, and bad news travels fast. I mean, he died this afternoon, and by this evening it was everywhere. And I was one of the guys who posted it, and one person after another, asking me what happened. And I said I wasn't physically there, but my friends were, and it's just a nightmare.
My good friend Mark Bison Smith, who himself died almost 13 years ago, and and was obviously, a tragic death himself, was in the ring when I'm blanking on his name. The Japanese wrestler that died when he took the suplex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Misawa?
Yeah, Misawa. Sorry, thanks. Yeah, he was in the ring when Misawa had his, heart attack and died from the suplex. It shut off one of his nerves when he hit the mat, and it just caused his heart to stop operating. And that was it. Just I talked to him about what his thoughts were about, and how that scared him so much when he was there for that. And yet, across the board, Evan, we've done hundreds of interviews, and I think maybe one or two wrestlers we've talked to say they would have done something else, or would have chosen another path, or not done what they'd done in wrestling the way they'd done it. Almost none of them regret what they've done in the ring or would change anything. What do you think about that?
It's probably not the politically correct answer, but when I talk to indie wrestlers who tell me, Evan, I've had 12, 14, 16 concussions and I'm making a comeback, and I go, why? It's not like they have a multi-million-dollar WWE contract. I said, don't you want to recognize your kids in the future and, have your faculties? It's not exactly a secret that multiple concussions are dangerous and could be debilitating. So I understand, follow your muse, and this is where they feel most alive. But you also have responsibilities to your kids and your family and your wife and whatever.
Well, that's what the wrestler was all about. That's exactly that very subject is the core of the wrestler, the movie, isn't it? I mean,
Rob Siegel, the screenwriter, said to me straight out, I said, Rob, everybody's asking, does he die at the end? And he goes, well, if he doesn't die at the end, he is going to die in the ring at some point because he can't function in the real world. That's the only place he feels whole. And that's straight from the screenwriter's mouth. So I understand it. As a teacher, you need to teach. As a stand-up comedian, you need to, tell jokes. As a singer, you need to sing. As a dancer, you need to dance. Whatever the case may be, but you need that stage. You need that attention. You need that love. And also, as you know, a promotion. Your indie wrestlers and managers and promoters, they become like a surrogate family. You're on the road with them. You go up and down those roads. You're at the Pancake House 2 a.m. or whatnot. I've done it with all my wrestler friends, and I'm not even a wrestler. I heel managed a fraction of the time you did, but one way or the other, I've always been involved in wrestling in some capacity, and I get it, but you also have to take your health and your welfare and your family into consideration as well. So I see both sides of it, but I would, when I see a 50, 60, 70-year-old, very out of shape wrestler in the ring, you actually worry, are they going to get through the match? When Ric Flair had that nightmarish comeback, I'm like, I hope this guy doesn't die in the ring, and it was
maybe I'd say a good 1/3 of the people that were watching that match wanted to see something like that.
That's pretty morbid, but
we're on one side of the wrestling, the bright side of the wrestling, viewership. But come on, you'd be fooling yourself if you thought every single person that watched that match, there wasn't one person, or more than one person that was like looking forward to seeing Ric Flair have something terrible happen to him, and to be able to say, "Oh yeah, I was watching when Ric Flair had 18 heart attacks and his head exploded like the end of one of those Mortal Kombat video game,
Scanners.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it was quite the weekend.
Does he have a GoFundMe site, by the way?
This was a 3 p.m. matinee today. This
Yeah.
is so recent. I'm betting there will be something like that, but I didn't see anything up yet.
When you find out about that, go ahead and post it on the Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast Facebook site so that people who want to contribute to his cause can do so. I know it's too early, but I think unfortunately we've seen too many circumstances. And as you pointed out, he was just an indie guy. He probably is going to need help with the finances that.
Just putting 3 kids through college is a small fortune.
That's you don't have to know how old his kids are, do you? Right?
In the photos on his page, they look like little kids. I don't know. I mean, I didn't really know him personally. I was a Facebook friend, and like I said, I worked on some indie shows with him. I don't want to exaggerate.
No, but there are a few indie wrestlers who are wealthy beyond all means. If you were that rich, you'd either not be doing it, or you'd be doing it on such a high level that you'd be running the Fed.
Well, that's another point I wanted to make. So I go to visit Jimmy Valiant, and there's Boris Sukov and Vampiro with him, and super nice guys, warm, friendly, really. But what I'd like to say is, these conventions and these appearances, go out and support these guys. If you don't have the money, publicize it. I mean, for the most part, I'm not talking disgusting greed mongers like Hulk Hogan selling autographs for $425.
Well, that's another subject that I want to bring up, but continue.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, you have guys out there doing multiple appearances in the course of a weekend. And for the most part, I mean, I don't want to make blanket statements, because one of the criticisms of the wrestler was, oh, we don't all end up in trailer parks. And I understand that. Nikolai ended up well financially. Bret Hart ended up well financially. Many of them do. But some don't. And I'm not going to name names, but.
Well, Kamala is a perfect example.
Yeah, Kamala, Kenny Casanova and WOHW Publishing did his book and gave him all the residuals from the book to him. It helped save his house.
Right.
Okay, so.
But he still had to have a GoFundMe to get himself buried,
Yeah, so if you see a GoFundMe, or you see wrestlers, legends in town, for the most part, I'm not talking about guys who are stars in WWE and AEW hawking their autographs for hundreds of dollars. I'm talking about old school legends. Go out and support them and pick up an autograph or a T-shirt.
Of course, that does bring up the story I was just listening to about on Jim Cornette's podcast about how Hulk Hogan walked out on a bunch of fans that were at a beer. He was at a beer promotional event for Hulk Hogan's brand of beer, which I'm not sure. I don't want to really know what that tastes like. I'm thinking that a drop of Hulk Hogan sweat or other bodily fluids goes into every can.
Well, let me say this. A major producer, I won't say his name, film producer, he started his career making music videos. And he said to me, I shot a lot of rap videos early in my career, and the rappers would roll into the hood to shoot the video, and they'd be promoting some kind of alcoholic beverage or whatnot. And then they would roll back to their estate in the suburbs, because now they're rich and famous. And many, not all, I'm not going to make blanket statements, many did not give back to the community. And you're basically hawking, a product that for the most part is not going to be good for a lot of people, alcohol, or you're a celebrity and you're encouraged. What's that?
Vapes.
Yeah, you're encouraging people to vape. You're encouraging people to gamble. It's like you're a millionaire. Does Hulk Hogan need to shill a beer? You're a millionaire.
He owes a lot to his ex-wife.
Whatever the case may be.
But we know that a guy like Hulk Hogan was never that judicious with his money. He is not a guy that probably, wisely invested in a lot of things. So, I think like him and Flair, they spent their money in different ways, and they're finding out as they get older, they still they're outliving what they thought
Well, I'm sure Flair lived a more extravagant lifestyle, but Hulk Hogan turned down the George Foreman grill, by the way.
Yeah,
that's a true story. Yeah,
right.
So, talk about bad business decisions. Oh my God.
And instead, pushed Pasta Mania, the spaghetti fast food place that never really, took hold anywhere. Although I think there's maybe one store in the Philippines or something.
So it was quite the weekend. I'll tell you another funny thing that happened last week. I had an interesting week, the good, the bad, and ugly. I go to a screening of film industry screening of Jason Statham's A Working Man. I interviewed prior to that David Ayer, the director. He was also the director of Suicide Squad, Beekeeper.
Get him on the show. No, I'm just kidding. He would.
They didn't give us like an extensive interview. It was a quickie, yeah. So anyway, I'm at this screening, and who walks out from the prior screening? Alexander Skarsgård, Pete Davidson, and some of the most stunning. They had to be actresses or models, like Stop Traffic, level beauties. And Pete Davidson and I have a mutual friend. His name is Nico White. He's a comedian, brilliant comedian. And I was tempted to walk over and introduce myself, but they were like deep in conversation, and it was a group of them. I didn't want to just barge in, and our screening was about to start. And so this movie, A Working Man, without any spoilers, you don't really need spoilers because it's every action movie you've ever seen. They kidnap his friend and he kills like 1,000 people. Basically that's the movie, like every other.
I don't think there's a lot of super complicated plots involving Jason Statham that I can remember anytime. So
Stallone is one of the screenwriters, and it feels like Rambo because the guy barely talks. He kind of goes, "I'm gonna bring her back," and then he kills everybody. But it's it's top-notch action. It's and there's tons of action, and the bad guys are really, really bad. And for the most part, I really enjoyed it.
Escapist, you'd say.
Yeah, it's like these guys are like real dirtbags, and it's a popcorn movie. I would recommend it to anybody that likes action films. It's not Citizen Kane. It is what it is.
I'd probably enjoy it more than I enjoyed Wicked. I'm so glad that Leno isn't on the show tonight because you wanted us to talk about Wicked. And
I didn't see Wicked.
I saw it. I don't know. I guess maybe you have more of a tolerance of musicals than I do. But this is my soapbox here. It's especially because it's my show. I get a chance to jump on my soapbox, and that is, I feel that for any movie that's over 2 hours long, for every scene that makes it over 2 hours long, you have to have the director give you a written document, a handwritten document that explains why that scene had to be that long and be in the movie when you could have cut it and made the movie shorter. The fact is, if it's not somebody's actual life story that you're needing extra time to tell it, 2 hours should be enough for you to tell any fictional story. Period. End of sentence. I mean, I'm so sick and tired of things like The Hobbit, okay, which is really a one-movie book being turned into 3 movies. Why? Just because someone can make it into 3 movies. And they throw scenes in of people walking distances and traveling and so forth, that you say to yourself, were that not there entirely, would you still have the same movie? Yes, you would. You'd have it minus the traveling scenes. You know, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, okay, everybody loves that movie, but there's a 20-minute driving scene that if you completely got rid of it, the movie would be absolutely the same, and yet it'd be 20 minutes shorter. The Eternals, okay, I watched a lot of these movies with my daughter, and she's 13 years old. And this was a couple of years ago. We watched The Eternals, okay, this Marvel movie. And we got 45 minutes into the movie, and I paused it for a second. And I looked at my daughter and I said, first of all, Jane, can you tell me what the hell is going on in this movie? She said, Dad, I have no idea.
Yeah, I saw it, and I'm not a big superhero fan, but I happened to see it. One, because I loved Jack Kirby as a kid, and
it was not in his honor, by the way.
I was not impressed, and it was endless, and a lot of it didn't make sense. But
yeah, but after the 45 minutes, I said, more importantly, Jane, I know you don't understand what's going on, but do you care?
Yeah.
She said, no, Dad. Let's just move on to some other movie. Let's just stop and move on to something.
I'll tell you the best story. This is funny. So I go to this film industry seminar, and they had all these female critics. They're talking about the Eternals. And one by one, they were saying how wonderful the film was. Why pray tell? Well, they had like a checklist. They go, it had strong female characters. They had lesbian characters. They had like a mental checklist. And one of them said, I watched the movie 23 consecutive days. That's how much I loved this movie. And I'm sitting there going, I'm certainly not homophobic. You could have all the lesbian characters you want. I'm fine with it. But this was not a good movie. It didn't make a bit of difference.
You'd say lesbian characters. I'd say what? I don't even remember any of that. I can honestly tell you that after about half an hour, it was kind of like driving too darn far on the road, and you start losing focus, and you just start going, and especially, when you're streaming movies at home, your computer and your phone start beckoning to you, that if the movie isn't good, you're going to wander over to your phone or wander over to your computer and see what's going on online and not really care. And I got to say, Wicked was that way too.
I didn't see it, so I can't really say until I see it. But
here's the thing, is that they had 2 hours and 45 minutes.
That's only half of it. There's another one coming. That's
the problem, is that it lollygags at a criminal pace. And you really feel like at the end of the movie, I don't know if you saw the Batman movie that they made a couple of years ago, but it suffered from the same thing. I got to a point where about 2 hours in the movie, I was like, I'm done. I've had enough of watching Batman beat people up. If it ended after this scene, I'd be fine. And there was this car chase with the Penguin, and he catches the Penguin, and at the end, I'm like, you know what? You just end the film here, and I'm just stopping it. And I said, I don't care about the rest of the film. I know there's another hour of movie to get through. I wanted to emphasize to the fans that Frankenstein, which is what some people consider a seminal monster movie and has changed the genre, was 100 minutes long. They could get in and out and tell the story, an immortal story of monsters that influenced movie making for decades, maybe centuries to come. and it was 100 minutes long. You don't.
Ideal length of a documentary is 80 minutes. I've had distributors tell me that. So
and it should be. I mean, you can tell a story. You don't have to drag things out and just make. And I think indie wrestling shows suffer from that too. Where they don't have a real time limit, so everybody gets is told, oh, you get a 15-minute match. Well, if you have 10, 15-minute matches, that's 150 minutes. That's going to be almost 3 hours worth of action. When you throw in an intermission. And then you have people having promos after that. But the other problem is that the guys that are booked for 15-minute matches go 30,
well, you have the ticket sellers, and then you have 14 or 15 matches, and it's going 4 or 5 hours. That's one of the reasons I enjoyed last Saturday. I went to Colossal Championship Wrestling. They had 8 matches. It was 3 hours. I reviewed it for Pro Wrestling
Yeah,
Post.
You said it was a tight show, and it didn't run late.
That's all you need. You have 8 matches. 3 hours is plenty. Start on time.
Bell time is bell time. I've got to say, Wrestling for Charity, that's one of their biggest pluses, is that they start and they end always on time like clockwork. And Butch, my friend, will not start a show. There's the promoters always like, oh, we'll give another half hour for the people who are late to show up. It's like, no, you just go ahead and do your show. If they're late, they'll come in. You don't have to have every single person there that's supposed to be there the moment the match starts. If people walk in the middle of the first match, it's not so bad. But you be honor the time of the people that did show up on time or a little bit early, so they're not having a 5-hour affair sitting.
Well, what happens is when it goes too long, it becomes an endurance contest, and unless a match is extraordinary, it's numbing. I used to go to shows where they'd be setting up a cage 11:45, 12 o'clock at night. And if you put $1 million in front of me years later, I couldn't tell you who was in that cage because you were so tired just trying to stay awake at that point because you just sat through 14 or 15 matches to begin with. Now they're setting up a cage.
And let me add to that fact that when you do something like that as a promoter and and the booker, and you make that match end at like 1 or 2, the wrestlers themselves need another hour and even longer to break. Some of them are breaking down the ring and putting away chairs and stuff. So that means they're not leaving the show till about 2 or 3 in the morning. And I've done that myself, by the way. I've gotten out of a show and then had a 3-hour drive to get back to my house. So I got back. One show I did get back, I think, around 4:30 in the morning. And, I was young, I was single. It didn't really matter at that point. But if you've got a family, and some of these guys will then get up the next day after doing a show, getting back at 2, 3 in the morning, they'll do another show that day, or I know guys that drive up from Northern California up to Oregon after the show, and then they fight in Oregon the next day, Oregon Pro Wrestling or something, Portland Pro or something like that. And if you don't know, driving from Northern California to Portland is about a 9-hour drive, a 9 or 10-hour drive. So It's just amazing that they do that. But promoters should think a little bit more responsibly about, rather than waiting to get, that last ticket sold before you start the show, just do the show and finish on time so that everybody can get home and get home at a reasonable hour, even the people who are breaking the stuff down, by waiting till midnight to start, unless everyone knows, that it's going to be like a Midnight Madness, wrestling match, and going into it, they know that it's going to be going late at night at a bar or something like that. That's one thing, going into the show that it is starting late, it's going to be late, it's adult based, so you're not keeping a child up. That's another thing that I thought was always really tough, is that, when we would do a show at CCW and it would run late, parents that had kids that were like, 10 years old, 8 years old at the show, and they would just be crying and cranky or going, because they were force-fed pounds of sugar during the match, they would be, running and hitting their other friends with chairs, in between matches and stuff. And it just got really out of control. So
you want to hear something funny? It's not
Sure.
really funny, actually. This indie wrestler posted that a fan hit him with a chair at an indie show. So they removed the fan and banned them for life. But somebody said you should have filed for assault. I mean, you can't hit a wrestler with a chair.
I can tell you this. This goes back a ways, but when back in like the mid '80s, Polynesian Pro Wrestling did one of their only shows in Northern California. They did one in San Jose, and there was a good guy tag team of these cowboys. I don't even remember who it was. I think Bobby Duncombe might have been one of them, and the heel Asian tag team. And this drunk guy got into the ring and tried to harass the Asian tag team, and the good guy cowboy tag team went over and just waylaid this guy. And the face tag team stood in the corner and just watched these two guys and it wasn't like they did body slams on him. They were just punching him the way you punch somebody when it's not a work, and they're kicking him while they're kicking him, and then eventually, and the security purposely waited on the side for like about 3 or 4 minutes while the crowd went crazy over this one guy getting the absolute tar beaten out of him, and then the security came in and arrested him and dragged him out. And I always said, you know what? Even guys that you think are like worthless talents and they're too small and too thin to be professional wrestlers, don't get in the ring with them and see what they know about fighting. Almost all of them know how to fight in incredibly massive ways that you, the drunk patron, have no idea how to do. So don't get in the ring with anyone that's a professional wrestler if you're not a wrestler yourself and don't know what you're doing. So it's a big lesson.
And somebody who understands wrestling appreciates a great heel. You don't want to attack them. You appreciate the art of what they're doing. You have to be a moron to get so worked up that you're going to hit a wrestler with a chair.
Well, and we know that Piper was stabbed, and we know that
Blackjack Mulligan was stabbed.
And one of them was stabbed with an infected razor or something, and got hepatitis or something like that. I remember.
I don't know, but Mulligan was stabbed very badly.
And Piper had to wear a flak jacket for a while because he was afraid. And so, I remember that Sergeant Slaughter, when he turned over to the Iraqis, we've had Kelly Slaughter on this show, and she said, they were making death threats against her dad. It just really, some people, even now, I think, have a hard time being able to draw the line between two things. By the way, on Cornette's show, this is a really minor point, but it made me think about something. If Jonathan were here and if Lena were here, I'd want to hear their opinions on this too. But since you're here, I have a question, and that is, what is a more effective way to intro a wrestler? Is it by having the theme music play, then you announce the wrestler, then he comes out to the crowd? Or do you wait for the wrestler to get into the ring and then you announce his name?
I would say you announce his name in the ring. Like I've said a few times on the show, Johnny Valiant used to say, within a minute of when a wrestler walks down an aisle, the gimmick should be so clear, good Indian or bad Indian, good cowboy or bad cowboy, where you just know. So it shouldn't be about the music. A lot of the music today is generic anyway. You can't, it's just some pounding, rock anthem or rap, anthem, and it's you can't really tell what the character is. It's up to the wrestler between the gorilla position and the ring to establish, what is this character? Are you the face? Are you the heel? Who are you? And it shouldn't be about the music. It should be about them.
You see, because when I was in the Indies, they always announce the guy's name first. They play the music, and as you're approaching leaving the curtain, that's when they say your name. And
Well,
I
I
never.
think it's more sports like in boxing, where you're standing in the ring, and it just feels more like a sport, less like a show. So that's what I would prefer.
I never really thought much about it, about whether that makes a difference or not. And Cornette says, yeah, you do it in the ring, and apparently there was a thing where Lex Luger got really mad at an announcer for not. In fact, Leno is working on Lex Luger's book, so hopefully we'll find
Lex Luger's book? I didn't know that.
or I think he's got some kind of like video thing that he's doing that he needed Leno's photographs. So we'll find out maybe what working with Lex Luger is like. I've heard he's better to work with. I got to say that when I interviewed him, I have the story of when it was one of the first wrestlers that I ever met, and it was when I was working for KHTK in Sacramento as their wrestling correspondent. I wasn't really paid for it, but they got me a press pass. And I went to Lex's Lex Across the USA, the Lex Express thing. Well, the problem was is that Sacramento was the last stop on the tour. And we were at Waterworld. And he got out of the bus. It was like 105 out. Got out of the bus. He looked at the crowd. He was like, you could see him just be crestfallen. I came up to him with the press pass. I said, I've got an arranged interview with you. Can I do the interview with you? He's like, and then every answer was yes or no. Even though I didn't plan them to be yes or no answers.
Yeah.
Everything was yes or no. And then 5 minutes. And then he said, I got to go. I got to go. And he left. He didn't sign. He signed 2 autographs. And all these other kids were trying to get autographs. And he just bailed and left. And we were all just that was horrible. That was it was the worst interview I've ever. I mean, Metal Maniac was pretty bad, but at least he, gave us an interview. But the 5-minute interview was so bad that KCK said, we can't run this. And the interview never aired. And I've always had kind of a negative view of Lex. And as I said, Hulk Hogan did basically the same thing to a bunch of other fans. And if you're going to have an appearance and you're going to say, I'm signing 200 people's autographs, you got to honor it. You got to stay there. You can't,
especially if they're online for hours. I think you should grab the opportunity at WrestleMania. You could get Triple H and Lex Luger's autograph for $8,500.
$8,500.
I think you should grab that opportunity, Russell, and make up for this.
Is there any human possible way that autograph could ever be worth to a collector $8,500? I know to someone's personal worth, it could be worth that. But there's this idea that people are buying these things as collectibles, that they're eventually going to want to sell sometime. You're never going to get someone else to pay $8,000. Well, I guess I could never say never because he dies, and then people suddenly think it's really obscene. And the guy like Triple H hasn't made enough money. I mean, you could say, Kamala deserved people to buy his signature for $8,500 because he really needed it. Crash Holly could have used something like that. But when you're talking Triple H, The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, who were there during the big money eras and made big money, and
they're still making big money.
And they're still making big money, and they'll make money forever off of perpetuity because every time the WWE, shows an Undertaker match, sells an old copy, a DVD of The Undertaker in a WrestleMania, The Undertaker earns money anyway from the Screen Actors Guild and all that stuff, and from whatever his contract is with the WWE. From he's not in the Screen Actors Guild, but Hogan probably is because he's done all those movies, So these guys are getting money in perpetuity, and they're still looking for $8,000 autographs, and But as we've been reading, the WWE is having trouble selling tickets to WrestleMania because the packages you showed me one of them was what, $24,000?
The regular tickets were priced $300 to $10,000. Then you have the VIP packages. Yeah, it's obscene and it's greedy, and fans are starting to say no. And I think at some point they'll have to lower the prices because they're going to. You can't always just take with both hands. It's.
I mean, at the very least, they could give you a dozen eggs for how much they're charging. So anyway,
right.
we're you know what? Even though this was a show that was about nothing, we're right at the end of the hour. It's amazing how fast that hour moves, and I really do have my heart go out for, again, the wrestler's name who died?
Vince Steele.
Vince Steele. That's just so tragic. If you get any kind of information on how our listeners can help him, his family, please make sure to put it on the Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast Facebook site. Why don't you promote your book and your site and all that stuff?
Sure. Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. It's available on Amazon. We have a 4.9 out of 5 rating. It's over 100 plus stories, and it's from the heart. And we honor a lot of late great wrestlers in there: Nikolai, Iron Sheik, Johnny Valiant, Tiger Khan, Melissa Coates, Nicole Bass, on and on and on. Bruno, of course. So, yeah, I poured my heart out in this book, and it's 316 pages. Every story is a short, fast vignette that I think will move people. And
does it feel good to have it be received so well?
Just today, somebody was telling me how moved they were by the book, and they were quoting me things from the book, and I'm starting to get people who are saying they want to write their own book because they see it's doable, because it's not a bombardment of minutia. It's little vignettes done in a half page to 3 or 4 or 5 pages, and people are going, I could do that. I have an interesting story. I have an interesting experience. And basically your life is made up of all these experiences, the good, the bad, and ugly, the triumphant, the tragic. I have a piece in the book, the best day of my life. I have a piece in the book, the worst day of my life. And that's anybody's life. So,
hopefully none of those, hopefully the bad one didn't include the show. So
No. It included another wrestler's death. There's plenty of them in the book, but also plenty of funny stories, road stories with the wrestlers. So, and the making of the wrestler, there's multiple pieces in there on making the wrestler, the behind the scenes, and what exactly transpired, because it was really guerrilla filmmaking done on a minuscule budget, and Darren Aronofsky really pulled it off. And that'll pretty much do it. But also you can find it on Amazon, or you could contact me through my social media, Evan Ginsberg's Old School Wrestling Memories, or my Evan Ginsberg Facebook page. And we have signed copies we could do by mail order, PayPal, whatever. And like I said, it was a beautiful weekend with Tommy Rich and Jimmy Valiant, and it was a tragic weekend with a person dying in the ring. And when people mock wrestling, oh, it's just phony. Inevitably, I go, gravity isn't fake. The divorces aren't fake. The injuries aren't fake. The kids not talking to their parents because they were on the road 300 plus days a year isn't fake. And dying in the ring isn't fake. It's not fake. So it's that's a curse word to wrestlers. I've had plenty of wrestlers say to me, I'm always in pain. Always. Thousands and thousands of bumps over the years. Your body hitting a ring, and some are much harder than others, No, it's not
And
fake.
God bless them. They all say they do the same thing over again. It's a common theme that maybe it's crazy, but like professional athletes in everything that have their injuries, they still go back and look at what they've done and said that they wouldn't change a thing. And that's why our industry is so incredibly bizarre, because no one should want to be hit by fluorescent light bulbs and barbed wire and thumbtacks in the ring and so forth. And yet we see them do it. We see them get hit by chairs and thrashed in cages and all of that stuff. The modern day gladiator, and even though it's for entertainment purposes, that's still there and probably will always be there even long after we're gone.
Johnny Valiant used to say the ring was his canvas, and he painted on that canvas, and they need that.
With blood. A lot of times you paint it with blood.
The Valiant brothers, they were known for bloodbath, 2 out of 3 45-minute bloodbath matches back in the day. But yeah, so you feel alive when you're performing your art, and you feel less alive at that miserable shoot job. A lot of these indie wrestlers, they have their, shoot jobs, and then they're weekend warriors, and a lot of this.
Yeah, well, that's what we saw with Cha Cha Charlie last week.
Yeah,
that was the story with Cha Cha Charlie.
And Cha Cha Charlie worked a lot with Vince Steele. He knew him.
Another tragedy. Okay, well, it's great to have you on the show this week. Glad that you could vent what things were on your mind, and again, if you get the GoFundMe for Vince Steele, please put it on the
absolutely.
All right, we'll see everybody next week. We'll have Mike Rain here from a noted California indie wrestler. It should be a great show. So everyone, next week. Good night.